Good evening. Welcome to September 24th, 2024, Park and Rec Commission meeting. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we have cell phones, if we can turn them off, please. Roll call.
Hale. Cornwell.
Present.
Duzick.
Present.
Noyes. Varanich. Snyder.
Present.
Zibel-Wolf.
Here.
Any amendments to the agenda today?
No.
No. Declaration of conflict? No. Consent calendar, looking for a motion for June 25th, 2024's minutes.
So moved.
I'll second.
Duzick.
Aye.
Varanich. Snyder.
Aye.
Cornwell.
Aye.
Zibel-Wolf.
Aye.
All right, I'm not seeing any citizens, no citizen issues this evening. Nope. All right, moving right along, unfinished old business.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Well, I guess this is under new.
New business? Okay, we'll start there. Level of service, Dave Fair?
Good evening, Commissioners. Kind of seems like old business because we go over this so much, but back at that time where we look at our minimum standards, which is one of our guiding principles in what amenities we add to parks and as we do our development and everything. So in your packet and up on the screen, you'll see some of the minimum standards. And we highlighted a few things to discuss. We're not necessarily recommending changes, but we saw those being some of the items that may have the most impact upcoming, whether through some of the developments we're doing and just through either public perception and or staff needs that we've identified. So the first one comes down to the amphitheaters. When we first put this in place, we just decided that we needed to have an amphitheater. That was about when we were working on Tullamore. Meanwhile, we also, working with the Vista, were able to put in a second amphitheater at the landing. Both are kind of different. One is the grass bowl type thing, and the other one is more formal with the hardscape and AstroTurf. Question for now is, do you want to keep it at just a minimum of one and see what happens, or would you like to put a standard in there? I don't see us needing more at this point, but an example is if you wanted to, you could say that we do one for every 30,000, and that will keep us going for a while. But staff is good either way, but I wanted you guys to think about how you want to word that. We have gone with some where we've said one minimum. I think Splash Pads was one of those. And then we came back after we had a few set in place and we set a standard. So I'm open to any thoughts on that particular one.
So are you using Tullamore anymore?
We had entered into an agreement with gentleman with Live After 5. It expires at the end of this year, and then we will be looking at utilizing that again.
So we technically still have 2,
Correct.
correct? Yeah, okay.
And as I said, as staff, we don't see the need for more. That gives us
Right.
one on kind of 2 ends of the town. We also don't want to see us getting carried away and saying we can put an amphitheater everywhere, because it needs to be programmed, it needs to be used.
If we say, well, yeah, no, we just need 1, but we have 2, does that mean that at some point, somebody may say, well, you only need 1, so we're just going to do away with this?
I mean, I suppose you could try and do that. We've never experienced that, but I can't guess what future commissions will say, what future staff will say, or even future councils, so. I mean, you could say you need 1 every 40,000. I mean, you could pick a number, and then at least you're set there, and you're pushing that we hit those population thresholds, you're protecting that aesthetic.
What's our current population right now?
48,000 plus.
I guess I go back to, again, what would be, if we put the need at 2 to match what we actually have, are we doing ourselves a disservice? Or if we leave it at 1, even though we have 2, our need at 1, even though we have 2, are we going to shoot
I don't think
ourselves?
it's going to come back and bite us. I mean, we have like track, minimum 1. There are certain things we've just set a minimum of 1.
Yeah.
And there are more, like we say, for within the community, the golf courses. I just know that we've also made a point to come back and say, are we comfortable still having it stay at just a real generic versus a hard and fast number?
Okay. So you want a recommendation?
I'm looking for some feedback. I'm not seeing that anybody is uncomfortable just keeping at a minimum of 1.
Oh.
So it says that we have available 1, but we actually have available 2, correct?
I think it says a need of 1 and available 2.
On ours.
It says.
Oh, mine
1,
says
yeah.
that.
Oh, so mine's saying.
You're on the wrong one.
You're probably on one of the older
You
ones.
want the one with the yellow marks on it.
Oh.
Keep going. There you go.
Okay.
Okay,
Got it.
we're all on the same page.
Okay, now we're good. Okay, thank you
We're
for
all-
that. Yeah,
I
thank you.
was a little confused.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
great.
okay.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
That makes
Um,
more sense.
Okay, so what you're looking at is when the last time we did
Yes.
it plus the lower population. but
Yes.
Really,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
one that shows 48,961.
Okay, I see that.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with keeping it
Okay.
minimum 1, but available 2.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I am too.
And just to be thankful, I didn't add the one that shows our population at 2035, because that complicates it more.
We'll just keep it at 48,000.
Okay. Baseball fields. That's one where currently it's 3,500. I think staff is recommending we go to 3,750. And that's based on just the usage we're seeing and some of the timelines for development. We know that as we get ready to develop the quarry, that'll kind of fall within. We can stay up at 3,500 too, but I think the 3,750 is more reflective of what we're seeing right now for demand. Can I turn this just a little bit, because it's very awkward? Okay. Okay. Does that work now? Perfect. So,
I feel comfortable with increasing the trigger point to 3,750.
Mhm.
okay. We didn't see, for indoors, we don't have control over that at this point. You know, that's what the school district has available. So I wouldn't make any changes. We're not going to recommend any changes on indoor facilities. We go to the outdoor basketball courts. Right now, it's 4,000 population. We've built quite a few more than that. We'll be looking at making an adjustment at the Warren Field update, but that's a half court there. So I think staff is recommending that we lower that number slightly. So I don't know. You want to go down, let's say 3,000 or 3,500?
And are we lowering that number off of usage or off of just how many we have?
The population trigger. Yeah. The available, how many we have doesn't change. That's how many are
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
And we do find that almost, a lot of the neighborhoods want a basketball court. So from a demand standpoint, we haven't overbuilt in that side. It was just at the time, that's kind of where we thought the standard would be.
And your recommendation was what, 3,000?
I would probably go down to 3,000.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
So if you're comfortable with that.
Yep.
The next thing is one that we hear we hear a lot of demand, people wanting different ones, but then we're finding some people don't want them. It goes both ways. But pickleball courts, right now we have it at 4,000. Looking if you want to change that at all. We have 10 available right now. We are in the process of adding 2 more, which will bring it up to that 12 number.
What is
Staff-
the staff recommending?
We really don't see a change in it. We feel that we're handling that. Everybody wants something available at prime time, but there's no point in overbuilding because number one, that's something more to maintain. That's another cost in there
Yeah.
in a location, but
So
I did
staff
wanna bring
staff isn't recommending any change? Okay.
I saw that in the quarry, just your tentative plan, that where you have the skate park, that you're maybe proposing pickleball courts
correct.
in there, which would be, I think, a nice
And those would
addition.
be a larger amount, so we could actually do tournaments and do some of that stuff.
So
We
is that-
thought of lowering the number just to match into there, but I don't think we need to. We can come back every 2 years on this, so at that time, we can look at that and see if that's driving it, but
Okay.
So
the next
the-
highlighted one was simply softball fields. We have it at 5,000. I think at this point, I would not change that. We will be seeing a couple softball fields built with Montrose, so that will get us up closer to that, matching the needs with what's available. I don't want to push it out too far. As we get that site running and we bring back adult softball in the town, we may see a need to address that, but that's still down the road. But I really highlight, just so you're aware, that we are working with the developer at Montrose. They'll be doing a little bit of work this year, and then the construction will begin next year, next summer, for two fields.
And where are we at on the quarry? When will the fields begin there?
Those baseball fields are a ways out. We are going forward. On October 1st, Robbie and I will fly down to Boise and make a presentation to state parks for the Land and Water Conservation Grant. And then at that point, we'll know in about 2 months to 3 months whether we were successful in obtaining that money. If we are successful, we would look at going out to bid for 2 soccer fields, the hardscape, some of the infrastructure going in, and the parking lot, and then we have some ad alternates for playground and pickleball courts. But the ball fields themselves are a ways out. the splash pads, we have it at 20,000 right now. We're ahead of the curve on that end. I don't think we want to raise the number up. I think we're okay at that, but you could consider going down to 15,000. But that would trigger that in the next few years, you're going to have to build another splash pad. And I'm not sure that we have a location that would work on that. Right now, we've spread them out pretty evenly, so.
Where are the splash pads today?
We have one at Beck Park. It's Syringa and Tullamore.
They're really utilized, I mean.
They're utilized.
A lot.
One of our
So-
big fears is you're going to see, at some point, the state will require us to treat all the water.
The runoff.
And then that means a major renovation on all three systems. They become a swimming pool. So that's one reason we're kind of not overbuilding, kind of walking through that. We also know that splash pads that, depending on which water purveyor we go into, the costs go up dramatically or down.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing for the community. I think it brings families together,
Mhm.
and just driving around and looking, I just see that they're really.
Yeah, but they
and-
are high maintenance.
Right, and we don't have a community pool right now, which
Mhm.
I know that I work with a lot of youth, and, they're having to go to Spokane or to try to get space at the Croc. I think those two things are really important to keep on our radar, because I think we've got a lot of really great swimmers in the community, and it would be a great asset.
So staff looking for us to reduce that number, or?
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense if you feel like we need to put in more, or if we have an okay number for now, or do we have too many?
I think we have an okay number for now.
Yeah.
For now.
I
With
agree.
population growth and such, we may want to, but that'll drive that number.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to move it down to 15,000.
You'd like to go to 15,000?
Yeah. Isn't that what you recommend, or isn't that the number you threw out, was
I
15?
threw that out, you could have gone the other way too, but.
Yeah.
it's-
I know.
Yeah.
I
I'm
wouldn't
just.
go below that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so my thing is I mean, we can live in fear of what the state's gonna do forever. But I mean, I know that those three are used
A lot.
right now, and if
Yeah.
we wait, I mean, so with the number we have right now, we're good to 60,000, right? And then we wouldn't even consider it, we potentially not consider it until we hit 80, right, with the new trigger.
No, we'd consider it probably
60?
in about 3 more years. We're gonna be approaching that time, and the time it takes to build and do everything.
Okay. Even with a number right where it's at right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And if you wanted, we could kind of split in the middle of what you're saying, go down to 1,700 or something like, or 17,000.
Yeah, let's do 17.
And then you're gonna be
17.5.
right in there, so at least it triggers that we're,
Yeah.
as,
I just know that the community loves them, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
17.5? That's
Sure.
cool.
Again, without the
months?
pool,
months?
I'm even comfortable with 15.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like we need that resource in our community where people can gather and they can use that, and because, they're going elsewhere to
Yeah.
meet their needs.
Yeah.
So I would be comfortable with 15, but,
Meet in the middle,
Yeah.
7.5?
I'm-
yeah.
7.25.
so I'm hearing 15 or something. Seeing heads nod, but,
17.5?
or 15.
Or
You wanted 15. You started out
Guys
with
feel like.
15.
I'm good with 17.5. That
Okay.
almost triggers us for an additional, right?
I like it, here's 17.
Going
75.
once?
That will trigger us before 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's what we're after.
Yep.
Okay. Tennis courts. Currently, we had that the same as the pickleball looking at usage, I think you could safely bump that up to 5,000. It's not saying we get rid of tennis courts. I just don't think you need to add them at the same rate as pickleball.
I think that's good, based on that recommendation.
Okay?
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think the final thing in there, I just highlight the dog park. We're recommending keep it at 1. We do have land set aside for that. We'd like to get one built in the next 2 years, but obviously Black Bay became a precedent, and then trying to get the quarry done. So it's just how things are falling out and what it takes. We do have limited dollars available, so I wouldn't recommend it at this time. And if, by keeping it at the 1, if and when they get some of the freeway stuff figured out and we can convince the DOT for that original location,
Is that the Yokes one?
pardon?
The
Yeah.
Yokes, yeah.
It makes so much sense. We've heard very clearly and loudly that people don't want it in the neighborhood parks. And we don't want to put something in that's so small that it just becomes an eyesore and something that's not maintainable. If we're going to do the dog park, we need to do it right. And we do have the land now set aside next to Corbin Park, which is next to a dog facility. We've just hit where budgets hit. On the next page down, if you go, it just says potential park needs. I don't know if there's any in there that you would like to see just removed, that you think that they haven't become something to consider. I think we had in there, the equestrian park. That's one that probably we've gone past. It's not saying that there isn't an interest in want, but it's being handled pretty heavily on the private side, and we don't have enough land to make it viable. So that was one that felt that could go away. The observatory is probably another one out there. I think we don't have enough dark space here to really make it work.
That's the one that stands out to me is a pool, whether it's indoor or outdoor. But I believe that in the forthcoming community center, which is where we have property just out off of Celtice, right? The plan is to put a pool in that community center, is that correct?
That is the current plan, yes.
Okay.
So do we need to look at that number of 75,000? I mean, is
No.
that, no?
I think we'll be at that by the time. It's going to take a bond issue to build it.
Yeah.
There is no way the city has that kind of money, nor can we set up a tax. It's going to truly be a bond that will build a community center. Our big thing was to get the land set aside so we actually had a space. The other thing with that number, really it takes a certain amount of people to try and make it viable and generate enough revenue to offset some of the operational costs. It won't offset completely, so there will be a subsidy, and that's one of the things that's going to have to be accepted by future councils, is this X amount will go towards supporting that. So.
What is a floating picnic site?
Kirkland, Washington had some on Lake Washington, and they simply were, you know, like a low round dock that had a bench on, all around it, and the inside was a table. It was a way for them to extend that water access.
Gotcha.
And we don't have more waterfront. It's just not
Mhm.
there. We're limited. So that's really why that's in there as a placeholder, is how do we expand what's available for the public? In some ways, we're doing that with Black Bay, with the
Yeah.
boardwalk in that sense. But that's what a floating picnic site was. It was
Gotcha.
actually a pretty clever design and pretty popular.
Okay.
I think some of the things that came up for consideration, I know we've had requests to put in a remote-controlled airport. And simply because there used to be one out off of 41, I think it was on Highway District property, and that one is gone now. There also used to be one over at Riverbend on University of Idaho's property. And I've been told that that one's gone too. So I know that that request has gone in. I don't know how much land it takes, or is it compatible with other things, but that's a request I would see. I think the other thing, short of building a community center, is we're gonna have to look at a field house, probably sooner than later. We're limited on the number of gyms that are available. And that's one of the things that always worries us, is we have the demand, but I'm not sure we can handle the growth without us actually putting in some indoor basketball courts. The only way to do that reasonably is to create a field house. Other requests we've had, I think like a drone course probably takes up way, I have no idea once again, but that, from what I've seen on TV, that's a lot of land. And some of those things we just can't provide. We don't have enough land to build another disc golf course, which we really should. It's just, we have to kind of look at the rate of return, but I know a field house would probably be one I'd put in there. It's not saying we're building it, but at least it's on
Yeah.
our radar.
Mhm.
So the highlighted stuff is things that staff had looked at that felt need to be done, but you can see the whole list in our standards. Is there anything in there that wasn't covered that you feel should be addressed?
For the camping or RV site, I know, like, of course, we have a property shortage or whatever, but, I mean, would that sustain itself? Would we be profitable off something like that?
In my opinion, yes.
Hmm.
We actually have land that we have set aside for it. But we're using it right now for soccer fields. That's the Hastings House near Corbin Park. So we really need to get the quarry, those soccer fields done, and or others, so we can look, or I guess get that done before we look at the RV. There are grants out there through state parks, so for a minimal investment, you can put them in. We're not looking at a big RV spot or camping spot. Really, it's how do we work off of the Centennial Trail? How do we handle residents who would like to go camping, but maybe they're new to the region, they're not as comfortable going out into further out, or they don't have enough time. I remember Michael Wolf talking about, with his job and his requirements to be there so much, he would love to have had a spot where he could take his kids overnight, even though he lived in Post Falls, just to be able to go there and have that experience. So that's really what we're looking at when we do that. We're not looking at building another Coeur d'Alene RV or anything like that. It would be much smaller in scale. We do know that there's a lot of bicyclists that come through on the Centennial Trail, and we do host, I can't think of their name, they're out of Washington, but they're a bicycling club. And they do, every year they go on a different tour in Washington. Usually it's done either southwest, northwest, southeast, that stuff. They've been here twice, and we've allowed them to use that, actually, the Hastings property at Corbin. And they use it for one night, but that's where they set up their week-long tour. We've had a couple Boy Scout groups come in. We've had firefighters come in, so the wildland firefighters. So it has a use, but the biggest thing is we know families are busy. Not all of them are comfortable going out into the national parks yet. If this gets their foot in the door and makes it a little more comfortable, a single mother, it might be more appealing for her to be in, or a single father, where they're a little more contained. So
Nice.
that's really what we looked at.
Okay. Sounds good.
So if you're comfortable with those changes, we'll make them.
Yep.
It's timely because we're working on impact fees and that update, so that's one of the things that ties into what we do.
Yep.
The other part will be some of the design standards, which is what Robbie gets to talk about. So, thank you.
All right, park standards, is that you, Robbie? All right.
And I got the microphone all set for you.
Good evening, members of the commission. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, here to kind of go over a little bit of the design standards manual and then seeking the commission's adoption of this manual. So we came up with this, I think, showed you a little bit about it a couple years ago, and we've made some tweaks and finally getting around to getting it adopted. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, just kind of briefly lay out like what it is, why we have it, and kind of the organization of the document itself. So kind of introduction, really the idea is to get a set of design standards to help kind of establish the look and the feel and identity of our parks and how they relate to each other and the park system as a whole, so people can really identify what's a city park. There's, you know, this furnishing's the same in every park, this trash can, this bench, this sign, these shelters, the restrooms, they all kind of look similar. And then it really sets us apart from some of the HOA parks. And so the goal is kind of to use this for developers, contractors, consultants, and then just our own internal staff. And again, to establish kind of the pattern and the elements that we'll typically see, and to lay out kind of the level of craftsmanship and the products that we expect to be designed in our park system. And so the main categories are park classifications, so kind of the different types of parks that we have. Then we go into buildings and shelters, parking lots, playground and landscape design, fields, sports courts, play systems, walkways, paths and bridges, lighting, fencing and railing, signage, and then lastly, site furnishings. So kind of give an example of how some of those classifications look. So for example, we'll go through and lay out the different parks. So this is a regional park. We kind of describe what that is, typical size range, the service area, like essentially how far people are coming to this park, level of staffing, typical utilities, and then we list the types of parks that fall under this category, and then the typical amenities you'll see. So we go through that: community parks, neighborhood park, urban plaza, pocket parks, open space, linear, and then special use. So that would be kind of the skate park, and then future dog park. And then this is kind of a chart that basically lays out everything that those types of parks and the standard amenity per park. So then the next category, buildings and shelters, we kind of go through and say what the buildings are typically in a parks, generally restrooms or maintenance facilities, kind of what those lay out and how we like to orient them, site them on the sites. And then obviously the different shelters we have, whether it's a wood structure or a metal structure or a fabric structure, and kind of laying out those different standards that need to be met, et cetera. So again, without going through the whole thing, that's kind of how the document lays out and why we have it essentially and why we're producing it. So again, this evening, just looking for your adoption of this document. So if you have any questions, I will stand for questions.
And is
Any
this an action item? It
Just
is.
for adoption, yeah.
Correct.
And Robbie, was there any major changes to this?
Not really. Again, it's just kind of something that we had never got adopted. So then obviously went back through and make sure any codes hadn't changed that we needed to update or that sort of thing. But for the most part, it's the same. We even condensed it a little bit. We had a kind of towards the end, there's some standard details in here that we had a lot more of, but that's in a separate document. So we got rid of some of those just to, so it wasn't, 100 pages long. But for the most part, it hasn't changed.
I like it, I guess. I'll make the motion to approve it
I'll second.
as presented. Yeah.
Mhm.
Snyder,
Aye.
Duzick,
Aye.
C. Bellwolf,
Aye.
Cornwell.
Aye.
Thank you, because as Rob said, as we're going through some of the impact fees, looking at different things, it was one of those things we realized that even though we presented a while back, we hadn't formally adopted it, so housekeeping, and we're just trying to make sure we're doing everything proper.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Memo?
Oh, that was, pardon,
That was
from the last,
from the last one.
sorry.
Okay, no worries. Staff reports or anything from you guys?
Just so you know that a lot of the construction is winding down. Woodbridge, the new playground and shelter, it's open and active. The old playground was taken down. There was some concern by a few of the residents that the new playground did not service all ages of kids, and actually it still serviced the 5 to 12, but we added the 2 to 5, and there were more components to it, but it wasn't as tall, so it didn't look as imposing. The reason the other one was taken down simply is it had come to an end of its life. We couldn't get the parts, and child safety is the ultimate responsibility. So that one is down. Staff has been cleaning out the site, clearing it up, and we will be proceeding with the pickleball courts as discussed. So we had some people that were against it. We had people that were for it. And I think that's what you'll find with almost every project we do. So when we go to Warren Playfield, we'll see some of the same things. Black Bay, everything above the water, upper part is being finished off. They're working on the landscaping, or we'll start work on the landscaping, but it's coming along. Working on new design for the boardwalk. It had to be re-engineered, some of the challenges of driving into rock, so they found that only about 60% of the pilings would probably meet what they needed, so there's been some adjustments, and we're still working on that. So that'll come back to council, but that won't be starting until this winter at low water. Community garden is progressing and should be wrapped up before the winter hits. So it's going to look nice. And I think that's about it for the projects that are underway. The city did receive a block grant for the parking area roadway improvements at Warren Playfield. Along with that, the city council did approve dollars for renovating that playground, addressing the basketball court, and then shelters, and just redoing the park to address ADA issues. So that'll be next year's project.
Awesome.
Good.
Commission comments, anything from the group? Hearing
Oh, and
none.
one thing I do have to add, because Tracy will get mad at me if I don't, but Shoes and Brews will be coming up on
October 5th.
October 5th. So if anybody would like to come help and do directing or help with pouring or anything in there, volunteers are always welcome if you want to participate. That is great too. But it's a fun event and it's at Kiwanis Park, so. Okay, now Tracy won't be mad
Nice
at me.
plug, yes. All right, if we have nothing from the group, we'll go ahead and adjourn.